It's
Yeah.
interesting. It's just, it doesn't, without, you know, sort of drawing too many conclusions from what isn't here,
Right. Well,
which
I
I
want to
feel
talk
like
about
I'm
that with
doing a
the
lot of.
right.
I do feel like I'm kind of doing a good bit of that in this book. And that's one of the things that if I was going to be critical of, I would be critical of that.
And we've talked.
Um,
This is another reoccurring theme on Heavy Board, where we've talked about this in terms of influence, right? So if we are reading a book, and let's say we watch a lecture on it before we record, or something like that, so we have somebody else's thoughts kind of influencing ours or something, right? And we're always kind of like, all right, like, how much did that change my thinking type stuff. It's the same idea, but in like poetry, it's like, or fiction or anything. Yeah, it's like once you learn, like we said, if you read this without reading any notes or any of the writings on the book, you might not make the connection.
mhm.
But then sometimes we run the risk of once we make that connection, well, then like using that to, paint over everything, kind of.
Yeah, and
And
there
then,
is a circumstance which it's like hitting you over the head with it, where it's like, okay, like we don't need, you've already alluded to this thing, we don't need you to tell us, you know, it's referring to this day precisely at this time and that this is exactly what happens. If you give us a little bit, we can run with it. But this is one of those cases where I wish a little bit more had been given. I still remember, like, you know, it's like having a class where your professor gives you a poem that refers to the March on Washington and stops the class to ask you if you all, know what that refers to. It's like, yeah, dude, we didn't need more than that. Like, just that one, the words March on Washington was enough. It was probably a little bit more than enough. This, I wanted a little bit more.
Section 11, I think, works pretty flawlessly, and that's right after the Whitman references. Page